Chapter 11. The Spirit of Holding Grudges. Princess Silenda learned from her grandmother Ilzisnia and Miradello, who was very happy the princess had finally decided to do more than research magical theory. He was to magic as Luzmo was to philosophy and theology. Prince Gero kept running off, followed by an increasingly out-of-breath Cara, until Princess Silenda told her she should stop. Alicaria, Verisica, and Cara continued gathering information and passing it on to Lady Quinia. The Natchez entrance gave the Silendites a more solid target, and a close one, but the Natchez attacked first, using the Soledo River as a convenient way into town, mostly undetected. The walls around the city could not hold back the river. The war to all of Quinia was suddenly feeling much more real. Prince Gero, of course, kept trying to run out to fight. Linsco's status as the Jarissa was kept secret, so more of the wrong people would not find out. He would not be bothered by some people, i.e. Prince Gero, and to avoid causing panic. Despite the escalation, Prince Sirion stayed firm on his neutrality and his earlier assertions. And no one would dare poke the proverbial sleeping bear that was the Jarisse. The Rossini began to venture into Ardera, but the queen was more focused on the Nachi at her doorstep than the Rossini in the south. The soldiers in Bereda and Ardera disagreed, as did Beredans and Arderans in other parts of the country. On the third agradi of Hewatelomi, around the time that Yorahenyu would be said, Linsco was awoken by a noise from under his bed. For a second, he thought that he had been awoken by the twins leaving to say Yorahenyu with Father Elminio. He chuckled as he remembered that he had not lived with the twins since they were 18, around 7 years ago. How did that still happen? He looked under his bed and sighed as he saw Esanhelossa, flashing and chiming impatiently. He sighed. What does she want? He thought. And why am I the only one she woke up? He picked her up, half hoping to have a short conversation while still half asleep, and then go right back to bed, but knowing that was probably not going to happen. She sighed. Oh, finally! I have been trying to get your attention for probably hours! Linsco sighed, wincing at her piercing voice. Do you have any idea what time it is? My sister's the blood and not me, he mumbled. I do not care. We are going outside and finding your predecessors. It has been too long since you did anything with them, and since you let that princess hold me, you have to learn all those skills, or I will not be at my full power. Linsco sighed, listening to the sound of his hopes of just going back to bed dying. Does it have to be now? Yes. Linsco dressed quietly and left to wander outside Soledo, not entirely sure what he was supposed to be doing. Besides, explaining to Esanhelossa why servants got paid, why when he got married he would not marry another as long as he lived, and responding to her rather tonitarian ways of describing Beredans and Arderans. After a few minutes, he noticed that someone else was out too, and was able to recognize the figure as Ilzisnia. Esanhelossa sighed. I hope you are not about to talk to that heretical criminal. She ain't no criminal no more, and she weren't never no heretic. And just 'cause you said that, I'm gonna go talk to her, said Linsco. You sound like the last one. He insisted on going to one of those heretical churches because I said it was heretical. He smiled. Did he? Well, I know where I'm going later. She sighed again. But someone like you should not be speaking to someone like her, she said. She is a Borgia, beneath you. Linsco glared at her. If I were my godmother and you had a mouth, I'd be washing it out, he said. And she's a farmer's daughter. I'm a farmer's son. If anything, I shouldn't talk to her because she's above me. She married the man who saved the kingdom. But she is a Borgia, Esanhelossa insisted. A Nashevna. Linsco blinked. Oh, what? He had never heard that one before, and he was very well acquainted with derogatory terms for Beredans. Esanhelossa sighed, the kind that would be accompanied by a roll of her eyes if she had any. You know, an Elayan. Everyone knows being a slave is the only thing they are good for. Linsco made an incredulous Linsco noise. Asheva and Zarevo were the old Quinian words for a slave. Now, those were only used in poetry, and the terms meliarebra and orirebro were more common, meaning stolen woman and stolen man, respectively. Meanwhile, in Tonatera and Aleda, there was a rude word for escaped slaves in Quinians that translated to thief or self-stealer. The non-rude word for an escaped slave had a similar origin. I can understand why you would want to have them back. Now you do not have to cross a border in order to find more people for the markets. Linsco very quickly sheathed her, nearly stabbing himself in the process. He was not going to listen to that. She made Zeppelcron look like Lonxe. All right, that might have been a little generous to her. Ilzisnia saw him, and they met. Good morning, Ilzisnia. Why are you up so early? Linsco sighed. It's the sword. Ilzisnia nodded. Nixisho said she can be very determined. He nodded. That's one way to say it. And she makes Zeppelcron look like Linsco. So what does she want? She wants me to meet with the other Arasiki. She don't like that I let the princess hold her, so I gotta learn from them and make up for it. Sounds like something she'd do. Zisho said that she would endlessly complain about how Mikya was at least not a heretic and was a princess, but the moment he tried to give her the sword, she started screaming that she wasn't the right person and a Riskan barbarian. Anyway, he just takes her there, don't he? Linsco nodded. Thefasija said I just collapsed. King Lidero thought the problem was too much heat and not enough water. Ilzisnia nodded. Ikyas thought something like that, too. Nixisho told me. Can you tell me about him? Linsco said. Ilzisnia smiled. I know I'm probably about to sound like a love-struck little girl, but, well, he was my husband. Linsco nodded in understanding. Well, Ilzisho was many things to many people. To most of the people, he was a shining knight whose home we don't gotta say nothing about. To Sela, a man forced into her life by Seal's meddling or the Dark Lord's curse, depending on which you think it is. To Mia, a tool who became a friend. To the children, somewhere between a father and a brother. But to me, he was much more. We'd known each other ever since we were children. He was a hard-working boy who cared deeply for his family and friends and would do anything for them. But he was also an awkward boy who had trouble getting his words out, especially to me as we grew. Even after he went on his quest and saved the kingdom, I still just saw the fine boy I'd grown up with. The boy who would do anything for someone in need. The boy who loved. I'd known how he felt for a long time. Everyone did, including the children, but he thought it was a secret. But that was when I realized I felt the same. Of course, he didn't want to marry no criminal, and life had become too much for me, so I gave up running the berating crime world and married him. Now, one of our sons is a priest. Linsco smiled, wondering if he would ever describe someone like that. What about you, Ed? You got a girl you like? She asked. Linsco stiffened and looked in the opposite direction to try and hide his surely reddening face and trying not to think about last Ilardabhes. Of course, then he started thinking about it. He remembered the warmth of her arms around him, despite the duomyi cold. He remembered the feeling of his lips pressed against hers. After Lacaria was over, Linsco and Thefia were walking home together, lagging behind the rest of their families. They had not meant to, but they had kissed. It was not anything crazy, but they had kissed. Linsco hugged her, rising onto his toes so he could put his arms above her shoulders. She hugged him back. After a little bit, he sank back onto flat feet, but then rose again and kissed her. She had been surprised, but kissed him back. When they had pulled away, wide-eyed and blushing, they had been thinking many things. They were thinking that they could never let any of their siblings hear about this, that it looked like they did love each other, despite their insistence to the contrary. But part of them had not cared about that. Part of them had been thinking that they wanted to kiss again. To get married, even. But they had not. They had gone back home, acted awkward for a few days, never spoke of it, though they both thought of it a lot. Ilzisnia laughed. My goodness, that almost looks like something he'd have done. Isn't there, Zisnia? Linsco made an agitated Linsco noise, very glad his siblings were not around. She chuckled. All right, I'll stop. Linsco sighed with relief. And at this point, Seo decided it was time. Once again, Linsco felt almost blinded by a bright light, and he returned to the forest. This time, Elo, Eli, and Nis were loudly and enthusiastically singing a sea shanty about drunk sailors, much to the annoyance of Elinsco, and especially of Elinsco, who had his hands over his ears. Linsco smiled, tempted to sing with them, but not knowing the words. Once they finished, Elinsco sighed with relief. "Thank goodness you are here! I think they only stopped because—" he began. "Etsa!" Elinsco interrupted, practically screaming. Elinsco glared at him, but he did not see it. His attention focused on Esanhelossa. "The sword whose name ain't spoken here, 'cause she's too loud and annoying! Run for your lives!" Esanhelossa laughed. Linsco blinked in surprise. "I don't even know her real name," said Nis. Elinsco laughed. "Are any of us surprised? Even now you are barely part of the country." Nis glared at him, and Linsco rolled his eyes. He was surprised that this comment did not summon an enraged Elinsco. "That ain't why. I never learned it, 'cause she wouldn't call me Quinia," Nis said. Elinsco sighed. "Again! Yes, she was wrong!" Nis snapped. Elinsco narrowed his eyes. "I was not wrong. You are an Elaine heretic," said Esanhelossa. Nis stood, glaring at her. "No, I ain't. I'm as faithful as Elinsco, and as Quinian too." Linsco frowned. "Why can we hear her? I don't have her out." "Didn't Nis tell you this last time? We can all hear her in here, just like how we can all talk normally here and remember me," said Ellie. Linsco sighed. "Great," he nodded. "Yes, it's annoying." Nis sighed, then looked intensely at Linsco. "Anyway, I see you've met my wife and dear Gizmo. Ain't they just the most wonderful people? A most beautiful woman and handsome man?" His tone sounded almost threatening. Linsco blinked. Ellie looked at him, eyes wide. "Nis, no! No! My wife was the prettiest," said Elinsco. "No, mine was," said Elo. "No, mine," said Elinsco. "You should have married the princess, Nis. She was much prettier than your wife," said Elinsco. "Yeah, and she was a princess, not some berated farmer," said Elinsco. He did not usually use the insulting term to berated, as he thought it was too vulgar for someone like him. The one Esanhelossa had used was exceedingly rare, and even Zebelkron would have considered it a step too far. "Says the man who makes fun of me for being the same thing," said Nis. "And you and Elo didn't marry the princess neither." "I could not! She died. And as for Elo, she was weeks away from her wedding." "I couldn't marry her neither. I was a berated farmer, and she was a princess." "And that ain't what I heard for why you didn't marry her. I heard that she was the first girl you ever loved, but she didn't want her husband to be a foot shorter than her. I heard you cried for days after she rejected you, and even more when she died," Nis said. All true. Because of her reasons for rejecting him, she had become known as Princess Silenda of High Standards, though this title was somewhat informal. Occasionally, her title specified that these standards were both literal and figurative. Elinsco glared at him, fuming. "Slander and calumny! It only makes sense that you would believe it." He had loved his wife, but he had never fully gotten over the princess's rejection and death. "Why, you?" "He is right, you know. We could not have the princess marrying a heretic or a farmer, especially not an Elaine farmer. Elaine noble, perhaps, for the alliance, though why anyone would want an alliance with a Serevni is beyond me, but not a farmer," said Esanhelossa. The word which began with S, which she had used to describe Elaines, was the masculine counterpart of the word beginning with A, with which she had described Ilzisnia. Nis shouted at her, and even Elinsco told her to watch her language. The argument continued in that way for some time. Ellie sighed. "This happens more than you'd think." "You never married?" Linsco asked. He smiled a little and grabbed the hair by the left side of his face. "Do you see a braid? It's a bit hard to find a wife when she forgets who you are the moment you leave. Same for the priesthood and religious life. It was a lonely life, but at least the tax collectors forgot about me." His gaze became unfocused, wistful. "Often wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been cursed. Probably would have defeated the Jarissa King, eventually. Probably gone back to Kirovino after that. Maybe married Sarola. Maybe become a priest. I used to be an altar boy, you know, before everything." He shrugged. "Well, no use crying over what could have been." I'm sorry. So the stories are true then? Warrior's curse makes people forget about you? Linsco asked. He nodded. She also took my memories and scattered them across the kingdom, and Temmie froze me for 100 years and aged me for 10 of them. Linsco frowned. The Jarissa King had been fully defeated 100 years after he took power. So, yes, Linsco, Ellie said. I killed the Jarissa King. Well, the princess helped and Temmie did something, but we defeated him. I was credited, in a way. This nameless stranger of no description. Didn't even remember whether I was a boy or a girl. Only reason people ever used masculine, if I mentioned at all, is because of how Quinian works. Because Quinian did not have a neuter gender, unlike languages like Riskan and Satslavan, they used masculine for mixed gender groups in situations when the correct gender was not known, except for a few words like Jarissa and Kiroda. Elayan also only had 2 grammatical genders, but they used feminine in those situations. Beradans often did too. Eladan, despite having 3 grammatical genders, still used masculine like how Quinian did. Only objects, animals, ideas, and places could be neuter. Oh, I'm sorry, Linsco said. Ellie shrugged. It's fine. Like I said, no use crying over what could have been. The argument over whose wife was the prettiest, who Linsco should have married, and Linsco's nationality and orthodoxy had begun to get a little out of hand, so Ellie stepped in. Everyone, remember why we're here, he shouted over the noise. The argument stopped, except for Esanhelossa, who was now saying some very interesting things about our Darrens that it looked like Ellie was having a hard time ignoring. Oh, right, said Linsco. Right, let's do this. He took his sword and went over to Linsco, who drew Esanhelossa. Wait a minute. And Linsco stood and went over to inspect the sword, whose well of insults to our Darrens seemed to be infinite. Why, what happened? I worked on to get to this point. How did you lose that last enchantment? Linsco shrugged. I don't know. She's mad I let someone else hold her and says she won't be at her full power again until I learn everything you have to teach. I guess that's why. Linsco sighed. Yes, that sounds like something she'd do. She nearly killed me for letting Jarisse hold her. The servant of the Dark Lord? Linsco asked, more to himself. That was his name? It's so normal. The name of the Dark Lord had been lost because no one dared speak it. The name of his servant had just been lost. Jarisse would undoubtedly be very angry if he knew of this. Of course, Esanhelossa sniffed. And you know where he was from? That cursed force now called Ardera. Esanhelossa! Ellie shouted, standing and glaring at her. His volume and aggression surprised Linsco. Ellie, you can't say the forbidden name! Linsco exclaimed. Ellie crossed his arms. What? It ain't like I said Linsco cut him off with a glare. You can't say that name neither. Linsco rolled his eyes. Superstitious peasants, he muttered. I heard that, he snapped, turning his glare on Linsco. Via Silenda don't say it, and she was the queen. Linsco interjected. The exception does not disprove the rule, and I was talking about them, not her, said Linsco. Linsco raised an eyebrow. We don't know the Dark Lord's real name because no one said it. We're going to say they're all silly peasants too. Linsco looked at Linsco expectantly. He blinked. Well, I ain't gonna say it. Linsco sighed. Please, you are better than this. I don't know no one who says the name of the Jarisse in play, or the name of the wife of the man whose name is the title, Linsco said. Allegedly, someone had put a curse on it because the playwright married his wife instead of her. She had also cursed the main female role because when they were deciding who would play whom, she had wanted that role but had been rejected because the playwright thought she was mad. Because of this, the only people who could say the name of the titular character were people who had ever played him, and it was the same for the name of said character's wife. I was dead by the time that was written. I know almost nothing of the context, Linsco said. Besides, there might actually be a curse on that. Brother Josebo had once been contacted by a theater who was putting on the Jarisse play and was dealing with some strange activity. He had concluded that the theater was actually demonically infested, though he was not sure whether it was because they were putting on the Jarisse play or if there was some other reason, because there were some other reasons for why it would be infested. Elinsco continued. There is no good reason for people not to say Elinsco! Ellie cut him off. Elinsco rolled his eyes. And we don't say the name of the sword whose name ain't spoken here because she's too loud and annoying, said Linsco. Are you saying you're a silly peasant too? He sighed. That is different. And Ellie does apparently. Look, shouting her name sounds better than shouting what we call her, said Ellie. Yes, but still. Ever had a spirit use your name? Or someone using blood magic on you? You know, when priests do an exorcism, they always ask a demon its name. Does power there, not just superstition? Superstition? I am surprised you know the meaning of the word. It is quite long. Ellie looked at him flatly. Well, I'm trapped here with you. I figured it out. Anyway, now on to the next skill. First, can you do what he taught you last time? Said Linsco. Linsco had practiced it a few times, but not many, as he was worried that his magic would go wrong. He had heard stories of what could happen when a Hadotling's magic went wrong. Elinsco had destroyed Los's garden. Elinsco had created a rainstorm that overfilled the Soledo and nearly flooded a town. He guessed it was how Ellie had ended up cursed by Temmie and Moria. And Elise had managed to cause gale force winds, and because of what it took to alter the winds that much, nearly destroyed a town and several farms. Linsco's magical outbursts had not been quite so dramatic, but he had almost destroyed the house once. Alright, more than once. Linsco concentrated, feeling the familiar tightening in his chest that came when he used magic. Esanhelossa's blade burst into flame. It came easy to him, much easier than he was used to. She was not allowing him her full powers, but he did still have access to some of it. A feeling of dread came over him as he felt his magic surge. A sudden wind blew. Elinsco's hat flew off and he ran to catch it. Everyone else held on to theirs. The wind stopped after a minute. Everyone's hair was messed up, and Elinsco was trying in vain to reach his hat, which had flown into a tree and was slightly above his very limited reach. He was jumping, but still could not reach it. Do you want some help with that? Elo asked, smiling. Elinsco sighed, crossing his arms. Fine. Elo got the hat down and gave it to him, barely having to rise to his toes. Elinsco took it and thanked him stiffly. Sorry, said Linsco. Elinsco shrugged. It could have been worse. Ellie nodded. At least it didn't get more spirits mad at us. That's the last thing we need. Yes, now let's move on to the reason why we're here. He straightened his hat, but he and Elo did nothing to fix their hair beyond brushing it out of their face, while Elinsco was trying to wrestle it back into its previous neatness. The next skill is about using magic for ranged attacks, he continued. Liasisha recommended throwing giant exploding fireballs at every problem with no regard for your companions or surroundings, said Elinsco. I think that might be part of how she ended up cursed, he frowned. Or perhaps it is some kind of mage joke. I do not know. I think it is. I wonder why, Linsco said. He had heard Berachon the mage make some of those jokes, as well as Miradello and his apprentice. Elinsco raised an eyebrow. How many mages do you know? Linsco narrowed his eyes. 3. There was a bit of a general aversion to Miradello due to his eccentric nature. He avoided Elinsco the mage's apprentice since he was a bit of a snob, and them being together tended to make things confusing, even with Elinsco not going by his full name, and he had not exactly become acquainted with Berachon the mage by choice, but he did still know them. Really? Surprising, Elinsco said. Linsco sighed. Anyway, said Lins, it's a lot like what you were doing before, but it's all in one place instead of spread out. It's kind of like throwing something. I have 5 older siblings. This shouldn't be hard, Linsco said, smiling. And Linsco laughed. Oh, you've no idea how many times I wanted to throw something at Genyokiso. I was more the target of the things being thrown, being the eldest and all, said Elinsco. You know the joke about trying to murder each other being how siblings show their love for each other? Everyone nodded. Yes, well, it is a little more literal for us nobles. After all, it is much quicker to become the heir by murdering everyone ahead of you in the line of succession than to just wait for them to die off naturally, Elinsco said. There was a moment of silence, and then Ellie said, smiling a little, You all had families. Must have been nice. Well, you have Savola, said Elinsco. He nodded. Yes, but as her parents were so eager to point out she wasn't really my sister. She was the real daughter, and I was just the orphan they got stuck raising because no one else wanted to. All right, now, Linsco, try. Just please, no fire. I don't really know what had happened, said Elinsco smirked, but Lins did not seem to realize he had done it. Linsco nodded and once again concentrated, trying to ignore Esanhelossa. He decided to use air magic. He felt the flow of the air as it moved through wherever this place was. Was there even proper air there? Whatever it was, air magic worked there, as evidenced by what had happened with Linsco's wild magic. Linsco directed the flow of the air and magic to his sword, then along her to the edge. He swung her, imagining that he was directing it at Meria, who had just made one too many height jokes and yelling was no longer enough. The air rushed forward like a wave, once again knocking off Elinsco's hat. Again! He exclaimed as he ran after it. What is happening today? He continued when he had grabbed it. Lee smiled. Well, that went well. You did it, and nothing exploded. That is very nice. So, can we go back now? I am getting tired of the pirate and the Ilardabhes. Unfortunately, it seems I cannot escape the heretics of the Borni. Esanhelossa sighed. Linsco glared at her. This was your idea, Linsco said, and don't say that. Elo groaned, and Ellie rolled his eyes. I was hoping you wouldn't bring that up, said Elo. We'll also be getting tired of you. Lys sighed. Yes, I reckon we're all tired of her now. You should go, Elinsco. And get some sleep, said Esanhelossa. Elinsco jumped. Never say that again! He practically screamed. She laughed. Linsco frowned. Again, this was your idea. The point still stands, she said. Linsco nodded and returned to Quinia. Jarisse was looking at her knife. She looked up when she noticed him stirring. Ah, good, you're back. I was getting bored. Now, I reckon you want to go back to sleep? She asked. He nodded. Then let's go, she said. They returned to Linsco and went back to bed. Like Linsco, Princess Silenda did not have the greatest morning. Hers was much worse, though. It is difficult to have a morning worse than one in which one is almost killed. This is not what happened, but the statement is still true, and what did happen was still not great. Two shadowy figures climbed Linsco's walls, one much more easily than the other. He had clearly climbed many walls before. The other struggled below him, hands and arms burning from the long climb. If he were less focused on not falling to death, he might have questioned why he was doing this, then remembered what the person he worked for was capable of, and continued climbing. He finally reached his destination after what felt like an eternity, and sat on the windowsill, tapping the other side with his foot, and glad he still had water left. He drank greedily, knowing his companion was smirking under his mask. The fast man was of a fairly average height and build, dressed all in black, his face covered with a black mask. He had been standing perfectly straight, hands clasped behind his back. His companion was a little on the short side, for a boy, about half a foot taller than Princess Silenda. He was also dressed in black, but did not completely cover his face. His eyes were dark brown. Took you long enough, said the faster. He had an Ardaran accent. The short boy blushed. Good morning. It was Silenda's voice. She was knitting by her granddaughter's bed, menacingly. The short boy choked on his water and nearly fell off the windowsill. The Ardaran was much better at hiding his shock and annoyance, in part due to his mask. Silenda Villadelia, said the Ardaran. Yes, that is my name, she said calmly. What is yours? The Ardaran laughed. What do you think I am, stupid? She smiled. A good thing you ought not. Now, I assume you are here for my granddaughter? The Ardaran did not answer, but his now recovered companion nodded. Yes. He had a Sonoran accent. The Ardaran sighed. Why did it have to be you? He muttered. The short boy looked down and chewed on his scarf. He wished his friend were there. She would probably laugh, and then he would too, and ruin whatever semblance of intimidation they had left. He knew he should not wish that, but he still did. Well, as I am sure you could guess, I will not let you have her, said Silenda. She stood, putting down her knitting, and picked up her sword. I will give you one chance to leave. There are 2 ways we can do this, and I have no preference. Nor do I, said the Ardaran. I do, said the short boy. I think. He winced, feeling the force of the Ardaran's glare on him, and started chewing on his cheek. Turning back to Silenda, the Ardaran drew the twin sickles at his sides, and Silenda drew her sword. The short boy fumbled for his knife and drew it a beat later. Silenda and the Ardaran fought while the short boy hung back, unsure of what to do and chewing on his lip. "Dagor, you fool!" said the Ardaran. The short boy blinked and glanced at Princess Silenda, remembering why they were there. He put his knife away and started towards the princess, but Silenda produced a wand from within her clothes. She reached out with magic, blindly trying to stop him. The short boy froze, screaming in pain. Silenda stared at him with wide eyes for a second. She shook her head and forced his mouth shut to muffle his screams. They sounded too familiar to her, and she did not want to alert anyone to what was happening. She took hold of the Ardaran, straining to hold them both and stay conscious as she pushed her magical abilities to their limits, as well as to stay calm against the memories threatening to surface. Gritting her teeth, she lifted them and let them drop out the window. She collapsed on the floor. She woke a minute later and went back to her knitting. The Ardaran managed to slow his and the short boy's falls so that neither broke any bones or died. Neither landing was graceful, but the former's landing much more. It would be hard to be less graceful than the short boy. He had been screaming and flailing and landed flat on his face. The short boy stood shakily, trying to feel in control of his limbs again and fidgeting with the cuff of his sleeve. The Ardaran sighed. "Let's go before someone comes to investigate all the noise you just made." He flexed his fingers. "Why didn't you know she was there?" asked the short boy. The Ardaran sighed. "She must have been using shadow magic to hide, probably messing with the air too." He paused, thinking. "She didn't like using blood magic. Did you see her face?" He stopped. "Wait, no, you wouldn't understand it." The short boy grimaced. "I was a little distracted." The Ardaran sighed and shook his head. "Why'd I have to get stuck with this blind fool?" he muttered. The one who sent them had wanted the short boy to make himself useful. The Ardaran thought that they should just treat him like a prisoner. He almost certainly would be if he knew the truth. The short boy looked down, blushing and putting his hands in his pockets. "I ain't deaf. I ain't blind neither." The Ardaran made a motion like he was rolling his eyes. "It's a figure of speech. I don't expect you to understand it. Anyway, she looked like she was keeping something back. I think someone used blood magic on her, so doing it reminds her of him," said the Ardaran. The short boy frowned. "Oh." The Ardaran looked at him. "You know who. Now let's get out of here." They left. Silenda calmed down and sat back in her chair, returning to her knitting, trying her best to keep her mind off of what had happened to her. Princess Silenda woke around an hour after Misha. "Two Soledo tried to capture you last night, maybe an hour after your Ahenya," Silenda said without preamble. Princess Silenda blinked. "Good morning to you too, Masika." She realized what had been said and sat up. "Wait, what?" "Last night, two Soledo came here to capture you." She frowned. "At least I think they were both Soledo. I am sure one was, but I do not know about the other. He was quite... well, he was not exactly graceful." "Oh, so what happened to them?" "I threw them out the window," she said calmly, but she stiffened at this memory of using blood magic, instinctively running her thumb across her palm. Princess Silenda blinked. "You killed them?" "I did not say that. I said I dropped them out the window. I checked and they have gone, and I did not see any blood on the ground, so I am sure they survived somehow." She realized what she was doing and put her hands in her pockets. "Oh, all right." She frowned. "Why would they try to do that?" Silenda looked at her. "I hope you did not seriously just ask that. You are the princess, the daughter of the queen and the future of this country, and that is without mentioning your magic. I am confused as to why Lady Quinia would order the capture of a girl who was practically her daughter. And I am confused as to why Soledo would work with Versene. We do not know what they have been doing since Shewat Nelami." Silenda sighed. "Kisa, I thought you would have more faith in her." Princess Silenda flinched. "It is not that. I wish I could see her again. Under different circumstances, of course." "All right. Well, let us get ready for a carrier. I will call up Jarissa. Your parents ended up having to go to the vigil, so you will go with Theophrosia, Elinsco, Gerokiso, and me. She nodded. Via Silenta left to change, and the princess began searching for a suitable dress for Lecaria. She chose a dress of a lovely dove color, made of a fine, slippery fabric. It had belonged to her mother when she was a girl, so its only ornaments were red ruffles on the sleeves and a simple embroidered pattern at the neckline and on the hems, the same color as the ruffles, which had only been added after the dress passed into her daughter's possession. Since her mother had always been tall, even as a girl, the skirt had originally been so long that Princess Silenta had needed to gather half of it in her hands if she did not want to trip on it, so it had been hemmed quickly after she inherited it. After having it, Lady Quinia had done some embroidery over the stitches so it looked nicer. As for the stitches at the neck, the princess had been bored one day and decided to embroider. Princess Silenta thought it was silly that she put more effort into her appearance for imperfect people than she did for the perfect, infinite creator of the universe, but she understood the value of not being ostentatious. Her father dressed his finest for Lecaria, but that was an incredibly low bar. Cara arrived a few minutes later to help with her buttons and hair. She was dressed for Lecaria rather than wearing her uniform. Princess Silenta met up with Linsco, Lonczeu, Thefia, Prince Gero, and Via Silenta just outside Linziso's gates. Thefia looked tired, as she had been guarding these gates between Yorahenya and Romieshe. Linsco was looking at her, wondering why she had decided to go this morning instead of to the vigil. Lonczeu looked happy. "What has you in such a good mood, Lonczeu?" Princess Silenta asked. "Linziso said he'll come to the liturgy with me." His accent had strengthened in his excitement. Princess Silenta smiled. "Wonderful! May I ask why?" Lonczeu paused. "Our friend Izazefa woke him up around Yorahenya, and, well, you know how she is." Linsco smiled, thinking of Esanhelossa's reaction to being called by a peasant's name. Prince Gero frowned. "The daughter of Ivazefa? How did she get inside?" Izazefa, daughter of Ivazefa, was a girl they ran into occasionally, who was like the Cineran peasant version of Zebelkron's mother. Linsco sighed. "Good question." Princess Silenta nodded. "I am guessing she had some, shall we say, interesting things to say about the Elaine rite." Linsco nodded. "She also said someone she knows goes to the liturgy despite her. That's what gave me the idea." Thefia frowned. "I don't know how good of an idea this is. Via Silenta told us what happened last night. I don't want Via Silenta, Resha, the prince, and me to be the only ones with her, and I don't want to be the only soldier with the prince." "I am sure it will be fine. It is not a long journey, and I am not completely helpless," said Princess Silenta. "Neither am I, despite what you seem to think," Prince Gero said. "All right," Thefia said uncertainly. Princess Silenta looked up at him. "We do not think you are helpless, just that you are a reckless idiot." "Well, you are short!" he shot back. She stiffened and glared at him. "Vertically challenged, brother!" "I would like to go to Lecaria today, so let us go," Via Silenta said. They split up and went to Lecaria and the liturgy. Linsco thought it was very interesting. They were similar, yet distinct. The music was quite different from that of the Quinian rite, faster and more rhythmic, but no less beautiful. He struggled a bit since he did not know the responses, but he did agree that Church Elaine was much easier to pronounce than Adelacite. It reminded him a bit of a Beradan accent, an observation he would never share with Lonczeu. They also studied the whole time, which, while he found it strange, he did like that he did not have to think about whether he should be standing or kneeling. Afterward, the priest, Father Sinzamble, found them outside. "Good morning, Lons. Who's your friend?" "Hope it's not someone from Ivavino who wants me to say his wedding or baptize his child or something like that," Father Sinzamble asked. He was Beradan, originally from a village by Serafine, a man as large as Zebelkron with the dark brown hair and hazel eyes. Since he was unmarried, he wore a hood. Since going to Soledo, practically half the town had followed, choosing to travel to the other side of the country to have him baptize their child, or say their wedding or funeral, rather than have Ulsisharzisnio, meaning the little priest, as he was a small man, especially compared to Father Sinzample, do it. No one liked Ulsisharzisnio, since he did horrible things, like moving a candle to the other side of the church, and putting up an icon of Saints Magria and Luchonsin, the patronesses of his hometown. Father Sinzamble's rival, the Nautarist mayor of the town, had even gone complaining to the Darist bishop of Serafine and the archbishop of Savine, demanding his return to his hometown. Both had flatly refused. Linsco smiled. "Good morning, father. This is Linsco. I ain't switching rights or nothing. He was just curious," he said. His accent was stronger than usual, as it often was when he was talking to Beratans, Linsco had learned. "I see. Well, there ain't nothing wrong with that," said Father Sinsample. Linsco fidgeted. "Do you know how my family's doing?" Father Sinsample shook his head. "No, I haven't gotten nothing from Bombir. Was Maroja or the priest haven't written?" "No, nothing," he sighed. "I didn't ever think I'd say this, but I'm worried about Esanhelossa. I don't like him very much, but him being an autorist and all. But I still hope he's all right. His family, too." There was a bit of a naughterist problem in the south, especially in and around larger towns like Saravine and Ollery. This did not help the general perception of Beratans, even though the problem was not exclusive to Bereta. They were mostly Sichists down there, somewhat luckily. Bietites were mostly up north, and luckily mostly confined to the area around Bietel's fake monastery. "I hope everyone's all right," Linsco said. Father Sinsample nodded. "So do I." He looked up and sighed. "Oh no, that Duke's boy's here to argue with me again. Y'all gotta go before he sees y'all." Linsco sighed. "Course." Linsco frowned. "Zebakron comes by to argue with Father Sinsample about whether we're heretics or not." He nodded in understanding. Linsco turned back to Father Sinsample. "Well, then, we should get back. Goodbye, Father." Father Sinsample smiled. "Goodbye, Linsco." Linsco smiled. "Goodbye," he said. He and Linsco left to meet up with the princess, the prince, Via Silenda, and their filla. Unfortunately, Linsco somehow still ended up tripping and falling. He stood to glare at Zebakron, who was smirking. "You must learn to watch your step. This happens far too often." "Are you all right?" said Zebakron. "You only think that because it only happens around you," Linsco said, trying to be more careful about his accent. Zebakron looked over at Linsco, his expression souring. "Oh dear, have you let Elinsco go into your heresy as well?" "It ain't heresy," Linsco said through gritted teeth. "But no, he ain't switching rats. He was just curious, and he wanted to go out of spite for people like you." "And I assume this means you will not go to the true liturgy today?" Linsco smiled. "We already have." Zebakron smirked. "Technically, your liturgy has not been approved by the Dara. The real one, not that heretic Misadello, or are you even more schismatic than I thought? Misadello was the given name of the current Sichist anti-Dara." At this point, Linsco decided it was time to leave, and dragged Linsco away before the situation could escalate, an action that was far more difficult than Linsco's pride liked. "It was approved by the bishops at the Council of Saravine," Linsco shouted. Or, that was what Luz Maroja had told him anyway. "I suppose I should not be surprised that you know about that, since it is the only thing of note that has ever happened in your backwater province. But it has not been approved by all the bishops, just the ones we know of, in a council that did not include the Dara at all. And your little friend is surprisingly strong," Zebakron called after them. Linsco made an angry Linsco noise, but did not turn around, and Linsco shouted something back about the Council of Dorinia, held just before the Dodechia and the Natia who had come to Quinia left in exile, where the Dara had given the bishops among their ranks an indult, so they would be able to do things like dealing with schisms, approving new bishops, and calling councils. Once they were able to re-establish contact, though, the Dara would have to look over and approve the decisions made by the bishops while they were in exile. Zebakron chuckled and went to find Father Sinsample. They met up with Thefia, Prince Gero, and Via Silenda outside their church, finding the third trying to console the first, who looked on the verge of panic, and the prince pacing with his fists clenched. Cara had rejoined them and was standing to the side, disturbed. Princess Silenda was missing. Linsco ran to his friend's side. "Tafasish, are you all right?" Linsco frowned. What happened? Where's the princess?" he asked. Thefia laughed a little, but there was no humor in it. "That's the question, ain't it? Where's the princess?" she said in dialect. "It is not your fault, Theophrosia," said Via Silenda. "Yes, it is. It's literally my job." "She is right, Masika," said Prince Gero. Linsco glared at him. He was not helping. It's part of my job too, Kara said. To her surprise, she was feeling fairly sympathetic toward the girl. You ain't trained to fight, Thefia said, and your father weren't no Soledo. Who knows what the queen's gonna think about this? Both of those things applied to Kara as well, but she could not exactly say that, and Queen Silenda did not know. Linsco was worried for those same reasons. You didn't do nothing wrong, Linsco said, and you know as well as I do that the only thing that'll matter to her is that my father was a Soledo. Linsco sighed, knowing she was right. The Fasisha, she might say some bad things, but she wouldn't do that, Linsco said. She ain't the Boclon. Thefia sighed. I hope you're right. So what happened? Linsco asked. I don't know. It's like she disappeared, Thefia said. Via Silenta sighed. I cannot believe I am saying this, but it might actually be the Soledo. Stealth is their main skill. Thefia paled and she added, Not that I think it was you, or that you had any knowledge of this. She stood. Let us go. What's the latest Lacaria's ever gone on a normal agradi? Linsco asked. Linsco frowned. An hour before Mandi, I think. Linsco frowned. It's taken that long before? Via Silenta nodded. When Archbishop Micharello begins preaching, no one knows when he might stop. He once spoke for what had to be at least 30 minutes about feeding birds. Father Misadello and Satslavan priests are also quite talkative. Father Misadello was the parochial vicar, and Satslav was a country south of Ella. There was a joke that Archbishop Micharello was trying to set the record for longest homily. He had also once joked that the longer the choir sang, the longer he would preach. The cathedral choir master had taken that comment as a slight against his music tastes, which were more oriented to older music rather than the more modern music the archbishop preferred. Preferred is a word which here means that he would only be satisfied if the entire Lacaria was sung in polyphony or recited. Modern polyphony, where the tenors were not cursed with notes that lasted for more than a minute. Somewhat ironically, the man who complained about rigid traditionalism rejected unmetered chant and wanted everyone singing metered music that followed more rules than chant and older polyphony. Also ironic was the fact that he wanted simple dress and decoration, but if there was music, he wanted the more complicated modern polyphony. You've just scrabbed most priests, Linsco said. Via Silenta inclined her head. True. Anyway, if you are about to suggest we try to find her ourselves before her absence is noticed, that sounds quite unlikely to me. I think we should go back to Linziso and tell the queen what has happened. Thefia paled. I won't let her do nothing to you, Linsco said quickly. Linsco nodded. I won't neither, though he could almost hear Zebelkron taking those statements literally. I will defend you as well, Via Silenta said. Kara nodded. Though she still thought that Thefia should be a rebel, she did not want her to get in trouble for something she did not do, though a bitter part of her was thinking that this would prove what her side was saying. She was very frustrated that she was the only person there who knew for a fact that Thefia was not a spy, would get herself killed if she said how she knew that. They returned to Linziso and ran into the king first. Good morning, he said. Then he frowned. Where is Silakisa? Via Silenta sighed. That is what we are hoping to find out. She appears to have been captured, she said. His eyes went wide. What? Where? By whom? He was also trying to figure out if he would be able to get to his horse before his wife or Via Silenta stopped him. About a block from the church, and we do not know who did it. Possibly the Soledo. It seems out of character for Lady Quinia, but I cannot think of many other options, King Ridero said. Kara barely stopped herself from making a face. He looked at Thefia. But I worry what my wife will think. We all do, Via Silenta said. He sighed. I feel I cannot keep something like this from her, but I do not want her drawing hasty conclusions. And I do not just mean it would be wrong to do so. It would also be difficult to explain why I am sending out search parties and where our daughter is. He thought for a moment, then looked at Linsco, Linsco, and Thefia. You three, start looking for her. Tell the guards at the gates to keep a lookout for any suspicious people. I will speak with the queen and then send out more parties. He would also be trying to keep Prince Geralt from getting out, though he itched to look for her too, and then run over the kidnapper with his horse. They nodded, got changed, and started their search. Kara left, trying to find Alicario or Verisica. King Ridero grabbed Prince Geralt before he could run off and went to find Queen Silenda. She agreed with Via Silenta that it was the Soledo, though luckily did not try to accuse Thefia of having something to do with it. He started sending out search parties, though, to his annoyance, ended up having to stay in Linsco to keep Prince Geralt from getting out. Jarissa and Alicaria ended up going with Consi, but noticing Cara, Alicaria found an excuse to leave so she could talk with her alone. Cara brought out an inkwell, piece of paper, and quill. "Can you write a letter to Lady Quinia? Tell her what happened? I'll send it to her. Know someone who'll do it for me." Alicaria nodded and started writing. "You know anything about it?" she asked. "Course not," Cara said. "And I don't think Lady Quinia does neither. You think it might be those Soledo the Queen says are working with the Rossini?" Alicaria frowned. "Might be. Not sure, though." She finished the note, signing it as written by her but requested by Cara, and gave it back to the other woman. "Right," Cara said. She took the letter and sent it to Lady Quinia. A couple of hours later, Linsco, Lonxu, and Thefia found Princess Silenda on the edge of town between two men, one dressed like an Ardaran, the other like a Cineran. The former was of average height, with blonde hair and green eyes. The latter was a little smaller, with black hair and dark brown eyes. The princess looked surprisingly cheerful. "I think you lost us," said the Ardaran. Princess Silenda smiled and waved. "Good morning." Thefia blinked. "You're giving her back?" The men frowned and glanced at each other. "We think you lost her, so we're giving her back," said the Ardaran. "And that's it?" Lonxu said. The Ardaran nodded. "But why?" He shrugged. "Why not?" "She's one of the most valuable people in the kingdom," Thefia said. "And you're just giving her back? Not holding her for ransom or demanding an end to the war?" "Yes," he said simply. Lonxu sighed. "Let's just go with it, Thefasija. We can ask about it later." Linsco nodded. Thefia frowned. "I guess." Princess Silenda turned to the Ardaran and Cineran. "Goodbye." "Goodbye, Princess," said the Ardaran. He and the Cineran turned and left. Princess Silenda and the rest started going to Linsco. "Why'd they let you go?" Thefia asked. "I am not sure," Princess Silenda said. "They were quite excited that they had caught me, and quite disappointed that they had to bring me back. I believe they might have been ordered to. At least, that is the only reason I can think of." "It must have been Lady Quinia, then," Linsco said. "At the sake I wouldn't order no one to free you." "Not that the Queen sees a difference," Thefia said. Linsco sighed. "No, she don't." Princess Silenda nodded. "I am sure it was the Soledo," she said. She sighed. "And yes, Lady Quinia would make more sense. But no, Monsika probably does not care about the difference." Prince Geralt came running over, Cara chasing after him. The prince stopped, scowling. "Ow, I missed all the fun!" he said. Cara stopped as well, bracing herself against a nearby wall and trying to catch her breath. Princess Silenda ran over to her. "Are you all right, Jarissa?" "Yes," Cara gasped out. "I thought I told you not to do that. You will hurt yourself," she said. "I'm a farmer," Cara said, still gasping. "I'm fine." Of course, while she had worked the farm in the months leading up to her daughter's births, she had not done as much work as she usually did. In a move that had made Luzmo question his identity, Fieso had let her rest when she said she needed to, rather than insisting that she keep working. "Did they hurt you?" Prince Geralt asked Princess Silenda. He and the others had come over to them. Princess Silenda frowned. "And Geralt Kiso, I am the older sibling. It is my job to be protective of you." Prince Geralt shrugged. "But I am larger, and you are a girl. Blame our father." She stiffened. "Geralt!" "So did they?" She shook her head. "They did not." She frowned. "Masika said the two who came at Yorahenya were an Ardaran and a Snavan as well, but other things about them do not match up with her description. She said the Ardaran was quite serious, while the Snavan did not seem to quite know what he was doing. She also said that the Ardaran seemed quite annoyed with his companion, and that the Snavan was a bit fidgety. I did not notice any of that from them." Cara wished she had been there the night before. The mention of the short boy had reminded her of Luzmo. The thought crossed her mind that the short boy had been Luzmo, and she laughed. Princess Silenda frowned. "What is it, Jarissa?" "Oh, nothing," she said. She had mostly recovered by now, but was still breathing heavily. "Some of that stuff you said reminded me of a boy from my village. It can't be him, though. Just can't." "Why not?" "Well, I ain't Soledo for one," Cara said. "Ah," Princess Silenda said. "Well, I believe we should go now. Risha, do you think you can go?" Cara nodded, and they started walking. The princess frowned. "So, can we talk about that homily now?" Linsco looked up. Why? What happened? Was it less than 10 minutes? Linsco asked. Was it Father Misadello? Did I really miss a Father Misadello homily less than 10 minutes? The pastor gave rather short homilies, while the parochial vicars were almost as long as the archbishops. It was around 10 minutes, I believe, Princess Silenda said. Birpi, Linsco said. He spent the whole thing basically saying the archdiocese needs money, Thefia said. But if the archbishop wants people to give him money, he should not drive away everyone that gives him money, Prince Gero said. The archbishop's rather strong opinions had driven certain circles of the church either to another diocese or to the notarists. Many of those people also happened to be rather wealthy, rather interested in donating, or both. No, Gerolkiso. He is clearly a notarist agent trying to give them more power, Princess Silenda said. Think about it. He drove away everyone that gives him money to the notarists, so now they will give that money to them, not to mention making more people notarist. Are's possessed by one of the spirits, Kata said with a perfectly straight face and serious tone. Everyone turned to stare at her. Who said that? Princess Silenda asked. Kata opened her mouth to tell the story, then realized that would blow her cover. Not great source now that I think about it, Kata said. The story behind it's quite interesting. Long enough to explain, but interesting. Well, I would love to hear it sometime, Princess Silenda said. Kata wished she had not said anything. My husband can tell it better than I can. She also had not gotten all of the details about it from him, for the same reason he did not know all of the details of her mission in Nakisa. Oh, Princess Silenda said, disappointed. Kata sighed. He works with the archdiocese exorcist when he's in town. What about that is hard to explain, Prince Gero asked. The parts I didn't tell you, Kata said. They found Queen Silenda pacing in the entrance hall. King Ridero had gone out looking for Prince Gero. She noticed them and ran to her children, hugging them tightly. Oh, thank goodness you are all right, she said. Princess Silenda smiled and hugged her mother back, while Prince Gero squawked indignantly and tried to squirm out of her grip. The queen hugging her son always reminded Linsco and Thefia of the former being hugged by his older sibling. Thefia smiled. Linsco was wondering if Ushakiso had also come from that sound. Queen Silenda let her children go. Prince Gero smoothed his clothes, which had been wrinkled even before his mother's hug, his face redder than Linsco's hair. So what happened, Silekisa? The queen asked. Princess Silenda frowned. I do not entirely understand. I was taken somewhere, but then they brought me back. Queen Silenda frowned. Why? I do not know, she said. They were quite excited to have caught me and seemed quite annoyed about freeing me. So they were ordered to free you, Queen Silenda said. It appears so, Princess Silenda said. Queen Silenda straightened. So it appears they have not completely betrayed everything they claim to stand for. How out of character. Princess Silenda fidgeted. Linsco and Linsco looked at Thefia, who coughed. Kara was tempted to do the same. Princess Silenda frowned, thinking. Do you think... Could I marry Soledo to end the war? Prince Silenda sighed. No, I do not think that will work. Many likely think of you as being more loyal to the Soledi than to your own people. If you marry a Soledo, that will confirm it in their eyes, she said. Princess Silenda sighed. I suppose you are right. Thefia frowned. She thought the Soledi were as much the princess's people as the rest of the country, and saw nothing wrong with the idea of a union between the princess and a Soledo. It would end the war and improve relations between the Soledi and the rest of the country, which had been strained for some time due to the difficult relationship between Lady Quinia and Queen Silenda. Also, every monarch who had married a Soledo or Soleda had also won their throne by force, often by poisoning everything standing in the way. And there was only one monarch who had taken the throne by force but not married a Soledo. He never married because he was 10 and thought girls were boring and gross. Princess Silenda marrying a Soledo could end this association. The only problem, really, was the possibility of her entering a marriage purely for political reasons with no care for how they felt about each other. I am sorry, Silekisa. No one wants this, but it is something that must be done, said Queen Silenda. Now come, it is time for lunch. The princess shook her head. I will eat in my room. I will eat with you, Prince Gero said. Princess Silenda shook her head. The last thing I want is to eat with you. Just let her, Gerolkiso, Queen Silenda said. Little dejected, the girl went to her room. Thefia was supposed to be guarding Linziso's gates again that afternoon, so she went to do that. Princess Silenda changed and then decided to play her harp until Kara arrived with her food. She focused entirely on her playing, losing herself in the music. Her focus was so complete that she did not notice who else was in the room with her until it was too late. Strong arms seized her from behind and covered her mouth so she could not scream. The air was filled with this overly strong floral scent, making her head spin. She dropped her harp and was briefly seized with fear, not for herself, but for the harp. "You have evaded us for some time, Princess, but you cannot escape from me." It was an unfamiliar woman's voice, but Princess Silenda could guess who it was based on the scent assaulting her nose. The scent strengthened, and she collapsed, caught by the mysterious woman. The last thing she heard as she fell into darkness was the stranger chuckling.